The blood of man should never be shed, but to redeem the blood of man. It is well shed for our family, for our friends, for our God, for our country, for our kind. If we meet this dreadful and portentous energy, restrained by no consideration of God or man, that is always vigilant, always on the attack, that allows itself no repose, and suffers none to rest an hour without impunity, if we meet this energy with poor commonplace proceedings, with trivial maxims, paltry old laws, with doubts, fears, and suspicions, with a languid, uncertain hesitation, with a formal, official spirit which is turned aside by every obstacle from its purpose, and which never sees a difficulty but to yield to it, or at best to evade it, down we go to the bottom of the abyss, and nothing short of omnipotence can save us. We must meet a vicious and distempered energy with a manly and rational vigor. Never succumb to the enemy. It is a struggle for your existence as a nation. And if you must die, die with the sword in your hand. There's a salient, living principle of energy in the public mind of England, which only requires proper direction to enable her to withstand this or any other ferocious foe. Persevere till this tyranny be overpassed. Edmund Burke, 1797. We call this project the Burkean Conservative because we trace our conservative philosophy back to the 18th century philosopher and statesman Edmund Burke. We consider him to be the first great modern conservative, and we aim to articulate the type of viewpoint he would bring to the world today. Some scholars disagree over Burke's perspective and what he stood for, and so as often as we can in this project, we like to clarify exactly what we mean by Burke's perspective. In this video, we consider his general disposition towards foreign affairs. This is particularly relevant today because in the past year, we have seen a more activist role by the United States military in world affairs. Additional pressure has been placed on countries such as North Korea and Iran to conform to the Trump administration's demands. And this raises the question as to whether or not such actions are conservative. Several publications have said that the Trump administration's actions are not conservative, and some have even quoted Edmund Burke to try to make the argument. Here we will respond to those arguments and show a more accurate view of how Edmund Burke might perceive modern international affairs. Edmund Burke was a member of English Parliament during the Revolutionary War, and many people know him as someone who tried to prevent conflict with the American colonies. Burke even successfully repealed the Stamp Act and showed himself a friend to young America by arguing for Britain to be peaceful rather than invade. Though ultimately unsuccessful in stopping the Revolutionary War, Burke became known as someone who believed in military prudence and restraint. It is typically from this stance that many scholars try to argue that Burke was against intervention on principle. They claim that Burke would not support an active military presence of any Western country trying to intervene in foreign affairs. But this view misses one of Burke's other great achievements, which was to stand strong against the forces of the French Revolution. In the late 18th century, Burke predicted that France would fall into chaos if the French Jacobins took over the country, and he warned about a coming reign of terror. Thousands died, and Burke saw it coming. Burke considered the French Jacobins to be a movement of leftist radicals prone to savagery, arrogance, and global hostility. Burke claimed that such an enemy was resolved to destroy the whole frame and fabric of the old societies of the world, and he argued that such a force must be met with armed response to prevent catastrophe. Burke argued against appeasement and diplomacy in this case, opposing members of Parliament who thought Britain should restrain itself. He urged them in his letters of a regicide peace to press with military action until the French Jacobins no longer existed. Even though the present danger was mostly localized by the time, Burke saw that Britain would be fighting not only for herself, but Western civilization as a whole until the French Jacobins were extinct. Such a stance could easily compare to our modern world, in which Western society faces vicious enemies intent on the destruction of not only the United States and Britain, but all of peaceable human society itself. Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State, and many other groups have declared war on Western values. Such a threat requires response before it grows too large, and Burke would certainly stand up for the preservation of civilization from such evil. Of all the quotes of Edmund Burke, there is perhaps one that is more famous than any other, and it fits this context well. Faced with a rising evil that swelled to threaten the entire world, Burke famously wrote, "When bad men combine, the good must associate, else they will fall, one by one, in unpitied sacrifice and a contemptible struggle."